What if the money you've been overlooking has been hiding in plain sight? Some coins are worth exactly what they say, while others can become valuable treasures because of rarity, condition, or one tiny minting detail most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the clues that separate ordinary pocket change from serious collector value. Thank you for your precious time and incredible support. Stay with me, because the real value may be hiding where you least expect it. A coin that looks like an ordinary $1 piece can be worth exactly $1, or if you know what to look for, potentially thousands more. That is the strange story of the 2000p Sacagawea golden dollar. I need to be honest with you, the normal example is not a rare treasure. Philadelphia struck about 767 million of these coins, and most surviving circulated pieces are worth around face value. Even many uncirculated examples are relatively affordable, but this is where the story gets interesting. The very first year of the Sacagawea dollar produced several varieties and mint eras that collectors actively chase. One of the most dramatic is the famous 2000p dollar mule, where a Sacagawea reverse was paired with an obverse die intended for a different $1 coin. Certified examples have brought extraordinary auction prices, including a reported $102,000 for an MS-67 example. That is not the value of an ordinary 2000p Sacagawea dollar, it is the value of an authenticated major mint era. And that distinction matters. If your coin is scratched, worn, stained, or simply common, you are probably holding a face value coin. But if something about the design does not belong, you may have a completely different situation. Let me paint the picture for you. The year 2000 was a turning point for American coinage. The mint was introducing a completely new golden-colored dollar featuring Sacagawea on the obverse and a soaring eagle on the reverse. The coin was designed by Glenna Goodacre and Thomas D. Rogers SR, and the Philadelphia issue carries the small P mint mark. The coin itself weighs about 8.1 grams, measures 26.5 millimeters across, and has a plain edge. That means your first job is not hunting for random scratches or hopping every strange-looking mark is an error. Your first job is identification. Your field protocol is simple. Place the coin under strong, even light, preferably without touching the surfaces unnecessarily. Use a 5x to 10x magnifying loupe. Start with the obverse and inspect the date, lettering, portrait, and especially the relationship between the design and the rim. Then flip it over and study the eagle, lettering, and rim. After that, check the edge. Do not clean the coin. Do not scrape a suspicious area. Do not polish it to make the details brighter. A genuine mint error can lose collector appeal if its surfaces are damaged. And remember, ordinary die chips, scratches, dents, and post-mint damage are extremely common. The valuable varieties are valuable because their characteristics can be documented and attributed, not simply because a coin looks unusual. Listen closely, because this is where the real money hides. Some 2000p Sacagawea dollars have recognized varieties that are dramatically more interesting than the standard issue. The Wounded Eagle variety, for example, is identified by an unusual die feature that appears on the eagle's breast, giving the appearance of a prominent line or indentation. It is catalogued as FS901, and certified examples have sold for hundreds of dollars depending heavily on condition. PCGS currently lists a $900 price guide figure for the variety, while recorded sales vary considerably. Then there is the Cheerios dollar, an especially fascinating chapter in the story. In preparation for the new dollar's launch, General Mills distributed 5,500 specially packaged 2,000 dated Sacagawea dollars among millions of Cheerios boxes. Years later, collectors discovered that some of these coins displayed a distinctive reverse die style. But here is the trap. Simply owning a 2000p Sacagawea dollar, or even seeing one that looks different, is not enough to declare it rare. Your loupe should be used to compare the specific design elements against established references. Look closely at the eagle's tail feathers and other reverse details when investigating a suspected Cheerios variety, and compare the complete design rather than focusing on one isolated mark. If the coin appears promising, preserve it exactly as found and have a reputable grading service or experienced numismatic professional examine it. The spectacular prices belong to authenticated varieties and eras, not ordinary coins that have been advertised with exaggerated claims. And there is one final distinction that can completely change the conversation. The famous 2000p mule is not merely a coin with a little doubling, a weak strike, or a scratch. It is an extraordinary die pairing error involving the Sacagawea reverse and an obverse associated with the Susan B. Anthony dollar. That kind of mismatch is fundamentally different from normal circulation damage. Major certified examples have reached enormous prices, with NGC reporting a $102,000 auction result for an MS67 2000p Sacagawea reverse mule, while other certified mule examples have sold for tens of thousands. So if you are examining your own 2000p coin, slow down before getting excited. Check the date. Confirm the P mint mark. Examine both sides under magnification. Study the overall design and look for genuine die variety or recognized mint error, not damage that happened after the coin left the mint. If the coin is simply worn and ordinary, its value may remain around $1. If it is a high-grade normal example, condition can add some collector premium. PCGS's current guide, for example, lists ordinary 2000p examples at modest values in many grades, while the finest certified pieces are much more valuable. And if you believe you have one of the major varieties, resist the temptation to clean it or alter it. Photograph both sides, record the weight, protect the coin in a non-damaging holder, and seek professional authentication before believing any dramatic valuation. The real lesson of the 2000p Sacagawea dollar is not that every golden dollar is secretly worth a fortune. It is that a common coin can sometimes hide an unmistakable minting story, and the difference can be found in details most people never bother to inspect. But hold on tight, because what's coming next is even more jaw-dropping. The next coin left collectors scrambling. Let's move on to our second coin. The strangest thing about a 2001D Sacagawea golden dollar is how easily it can disappear into ordinary pocket change. You could hold one in your hand, look at it for 2 seconds, and spend it without a second thought. And honestly, that is exactly what happens to most of them. The Denver Mint produced millions of Sacagawea dollars in 2001, and a circulated example with normal wear is generally worth about $1. Nothing spectacular. Nothing remotely close to a fortune. But then comes the question that makes collectors slow down. What if the coin in your hand isn't an ordinary example? What if the surfaces, strike, or die characteristics tell a completely different story? The Sacagawea dollar was still a relatively new coin in 2001, and the mint was working through the challenges of producing a distinctive golden-colored circulating dollar with a large portrait, a detailed eagle reverse, and a plain edge. That makes condition and attribution especially important. Here's what most people miss. Rarity isn't created just because a coin is old. A modern coin can become valuable because of an unusual minting characteristic, exceptional preservation, or a combination of both. So before you toss that 2001D dollar into a vending machine, take a closer look. The tiny D beneath the date tells you it came from Denver, but the mint mark alone doesn't make it rare. The real story begins with what the dies did to the coin. Think back to 2001 for a moment. The country was entering a completely different cultural era. Popular music was shifting rapidly, reality television was exploding, and the internet was beginning to change how Americans communicated, shopped, and consumed entertainment. Early in the year, George W. Bush became president, and by September, the country experienced a profound historical shock that changed American life and politics for years afterward. Through all of that, these small golden-colored dollars were quietly moving through commerce. The Sacagawea design itself represented an important change in American coinage, placing the Native American woman associated with the Lewis and Clark expedition on the obverse and a soaring eagle on the reverse. Now here's where it gets interesting. The ordinary 2001D is not a 5-figure coin simply because it carries a D in circulated condition. You're usually talking about face value, and even many nicer uncirculated examples remain accessible to collectors. The serious money requires something exceptional. Pay attention to this next part, because this is where people often confuse ordinary damage with a genuine mint error. A scratch running across the portrait is not automatically an error. A dent near the rim isn't automatically an error. Dark discoloration isn't proof of rarity. Even unusual-looking lettering can be caused by circulation or environmental damage. A genuine striking or die variety should make sense within the manufacturing process. That means you want to see evidence that the feature was created while the coin was being struck, rather than something that happened afterward in a pocket, machine, drawer, or coin-counting tray. Here's your action plan. Start with a clean work surface and strong neutral lighting. Don't use harsh reflections that make every scratch look dramatic. Hold the coin by its edge and rotate it slowly beneath the light. First, confirm the date and the D-mint mark. Then examine the entire obverse rather than jumping immediately to the most obvious mark. Look around the portrait, lettering, rim, and date for abnormalities that appear integrated into the strike. Next, turn the coin over and inspect the eagle. Use a 5x to 10x loop and change the angle of the light. This matters because raised die characteristics can look completely different when the light moves across them. Here's what most people miss. Genuine mint-made features often have a consistent relationship with the surrounding design. Post-mint damage tends to cut across details, flatten surfaces, or create irregular depressions. If you suspect doubling, don't simply look for a blurry letter. Examine the shape carefully and compare it with known die varieties. If you think you've found a die crack, trace its path under magnification and determine whether it appears raised, because a crack transferred from a die can produce a raised feature on the struck coin. And don't clean the coin while investigating it. No polishing cloth, no chemicals, no rubbing. You could destroy the very surfaces a professional needs to evaluate. If possible, weigh the coin on a calibrated digital scale and compare the result with the expected specifications. The point isn't to declare your coin valuable from your kitchen table. The point is to gather evidence. If something genuinely unusual survives that first inspection, photograph both sides in sharp focus, document the weight, protect the coin, and have it examined by a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. And now we reach the part that separates a fascinating coin from a genuine jackpot. A 2001 Sacagawea dollar would need a major authenticated mint error, an exceptionally rare die variety, or extraordinary condition to enter the kind of territory collectors associate with five-figure prices. You should not expect that from a normal example. In fact, the safest assumption is the opposite. If your 2001 dollar looks ordinary, it probably is ordinary. But that doesn't mean the search is pointless. High-grade modern coins can become surprisingly collectible when they survive with exceptional surfaces and sharp strikes, and dramatic mint errors can transform otherwise common dates into major numismatic discoveries. The important word is authenticated. A social media post claiming that every unusual Sacagawea dollar is worth thousands doesn't establish anything. A professional attribution does. So ask yourself, does the feature repeat naturally across the design? Is it raised or in cues? Does it appear struck into the coin rather than scraped onto it? Does the weight make sense? Is the edge normal? Does the suspected variety match documented examples? Those questions can save you from chasing ordinary damage and occasionally help you recognize something genuinely important. The 2001 Sacagawea dollar is therefore a perfect pocket change mystery. Millions of ordinary coins are out there, but the collector's advantage comes from knowing exactly what separates ordinary from extraordinary. Don't spend it simply because it looks familiar. Give it a minute under the light. Rotate it. Magnify it. Question it. Because sometimes the difference between $1 and a serious numismatic prize isn't visible from across the room. It's hiding in a tiny detail that almost everyone else ignores. Now, don't go anywhere just yet. The story gets wilder from here. The next coin is a true sleeper hit. Let's move on to our third coin. A 2001 Sacagawea golden dollar can look almost insultingly ordinary. $1, a familiar portrait, a small P mint mark, and perhaps a few scratches from years of circulation. But here's the cold case. Somewhere between ordinary pocket change and the auction room spotlight is a category of coins that collectors investigate for one reason. Something happened at the mint that wasn't supposed to happen. This blew my mind when I first found out. The age of a coin can be far less important than what happened to it during production. The 2001 Sacagawea dollar was struck at Philadelphia during the second year of the series, after the public had already been introduced to the new golden-colored dollar. Millions entered circulation, so a normal circulated example is generally a face value coin rather than a hidden fortune. The P mint mark confirms Philadelphia production, but it does not by itself create rarity. So why reopen the case? Because the valuable examples are separated from ordinary pieces by specific, verifiable characteristics, a genuine mint error, a recognized die variety, or exceptional preservation. Picture this for a second. Two coins from the same year sit side by side. One has spent years rattling around in pockets and drawers. The other has a spectacular mint-made anomaly or survives in virtually untouched condition. Same date, same denomination, completely different collecting story. To understand why the 2001 P deserves inspection, you have to put it back into its historical setting. America entered 2001 under a new presidential administration, with George W. Bush taking office in January. Technology was accelerating. The internet was rapidly becoming part of everyday life, and inventions such as Apple's iPod would soon reshape how people carried and consumed music. Then September 11 changed the country's headlines permanently, followed by the beginning of the war in Afghanistan. Against that backdrop, the mint continued producing this relatively new dollar design, featuring Sacagawea on the obverse and an eagle in flight on the reverse. The coin's golden appearance came from its manganese brass outer layers rather than solid gold, which is an important distinction if you're examining one today. Now consider the everyday example. A worn 2001 P dollar generally isn't a jackpot. It was made in substantial quantities, and normal circulation wear doesn't magically turn it into a rare coin. Here's the detail that separates a dollar from a fortune. The valuable candidate has to show something that can be tied to the minting process or an unusually high state of preservation. A scratch across the date isn't enough. A gouge on the rim isn't enough. A strange stain isn't enough. And a coin that looks different because it was damaged after leaving the mint is not the same thing as an error produced during striking. Now the investigation begins. Your inspection checklist looks like this. First, place the coin on a clean, soft surface and handle it only by the edges. Use a bright, neutral light positioned slightly to the side rather than directly above the coin. Start with the obverse. Confirm the 2001 date and the P mint mark, then slowly scan the portrait, lettering, rim, and field. Don't stare at one mark and immediately decide you've found something. Rotate the coin approximately 45 degrees under the light and see whether the feature changes as the surface angle changes. Then move to the reverse and study the eagle, lettering, tail feathers, and rim. A jeweler's loop around 5x to 10x can reveal small die characteristics, but magnification doesn't make ordinary damage valuable. That's the trap. If you're investigating a suspected double die, compare the suspected doubling against high-resolution reference photographs and look for a coherent secondary image rather than a random flattened edge. If you're investigating an off-center strike, examine the entire design and rim. A genuine off-center strike should show a portion of the design displaced because the planchet and dies were not properly aligned during striking. A scrape or dent made later will not produce the same manufacturing pattern. If you see an unusual raised line, investigate whether it could be a die crack or die-related feature rather than assuming it is damage. And pay attention to the edge. The Sacagawea dollar has a plain edge, so anything unusual there deserves careful documentation, but not immediate excitement. Here's where the case becomes much more serious. Spectacular values require spectacular evidence. A major mint error can transform a common date coin into a centerpiece, but there is no single defect on every 2001 P Sacagawea dollar that automatically makes it worth 5 figures. Be suspicious of blanket claims that a particular date or mint mark is always valuable. That isn't how professional numismatics works. Instead, look for a specific, documented error or variety and compare your coin against authenticated examples. Weigh it on an accurate digital scale, record the result, and photograph both sides in sharp focus. Photograph the suspected anomaly from several angles without using filters or digital enhancement. Then compare those photographs with reputable numismatic references. If the feature survives that process, don't clean the coin, don't polish it, don't attempt to flatten anything. Don't scrape the surface to reveal the error. Those actions can permanently damage the evidence. This blew my mind when I first found out about serious error coins. Sometimes the most important part of the investigation is knowing when to stop touching the evidence. If your coin turns out to be an ordinary circulated 2001p, you haven't lost anything, you've simply confirmed what most examples are. But if it displays a genuine mint-made anomaly and remains in strong condition, professional authentication becomes the logical next step. That is where a casual coin inspection becomes a real numismatic investigation. And there is one final question every collector should ask before imagining an auction house price. What exactly makes this coin different? If the answer is only, it's a 2001p, the case is probably closed. If the answer is, it has a specific, documented striking error, now you have something worth investigating. Condition matters too. A pristine example with strong luster, sharp details, and minimal marks can be dramatically more desirable than a heavily circulated piece, but don't confuse shiny with uncirculated. Artificially polished surfaces can actually hurt a coin's desirability. Look for original luster moving naturally across the fields as you tilt the coin beneath the light. Examine the highest points of the design for wear, then inspect the open fields for contact marks. Compare the coin with professional photographs rather than relying on memory. And if you believe you have something exceptional, let an established grading service or qualified numismatist make the final determination. The 2001p Sacagawea dollar is fascinating precisely because most examples are ordinary, while a genuinely unusual example can tell a completely different story. One belongs in a coin jar. The other could become the subject of a serious collecting conversation. The difference isn't hype, it's evidence. So reopen the case, examine the coin like a piece of evidence, and let the details, not the headline, tell you what you're holding. Stick around, because the next piece might already be sitting in your drawer. The next coin shocked the grading world. Let's move on to our fourth coin. A 2010p Sacagawea golden dollar can look like the kind of coin you spend without thinking. $1, golden color, a familiar portrait, a tiny P mint mark. Case closed, right? Not so fast. Let me tell you something nobody talks about. With modern coins, the most interesting discoveries aren't always hiding in old dates. Sometimes they're hiding in coins people still ignore because they look too new to be important. The 2010p Sacagawea dollar was produced by the Philadelphia Mint during a period when the series was moving beyond ordinary circulation and becoming increasingly associated with collectors, annual issues, and special releases. A worn example with normal circulation marks is generally worth around face value, and that is the honest starting point. This is not a coin where every 2010p automatically means a retirement fund. The treasure hunt begins only when you find something the mint didn't intend to happen. Close your eyes and imagine this. You're sorting through a drawer, and one golden dollar suddenly looks different. The rim doesn't behave normally. The design appears displaced. Something about the strike feels wrong. That's the moment you stop thinking about spending it and start treating it like evidence. The atmosphere around 2010 was completely different from the beginning of the Sacagawea series. Smartphones were rapidly becoming everyday technology. Social media was reshaping communication, and people were still dealing with the economic aftermath of the late 2000's financial crisis. Music, fashion, television, and internet culture were changing quickly, while Americans were watching major political and technological shifts unfold. Meanwhile, the mint continued producing the Sacagawea dollar, now with the reverse design featuring the eagle and surrounded by the familiar inscriptions. Here's the critical point. A normal 2010p isn't rare merely because it's a decade plus old. The value ladder changes when you introduce a genuine mint error, an unusual planchet problem, an extreme striking anomaly, or an exceptionally preserved example. This is the part where fortunes are made, or where collectors waste hours chasing damage that only looks mysterious. A broad strike, for example, can occur when a coin is struck without proper containment by the collar, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal boundaries. An off-center strike can show the design displaced toward one side. A rotated die error can create a major mismatch in the orientation of the two sides. But don't confuse these with damage caused by vending machines, coin counters, tools, or jewelry work. The difference is manufacturing evidence. If the feature cannot be explained by the striking process, you're probably looking at damage rather than a jackpot. Grab your loop and follow these steps. First, place the coin on a clean surface and handle it only by the edge. Second, use a bright white light positioned at roughly a 45-degree angle so the surface relief becomes easier to read. Third, inspect the obverse and confirm the 2010 date and P mint mark before searching for anything unusual. Fourth, rotate the coin slowly and look at the rim from several directions. An abnormal rim can be important when investigating a suspected broad strike or other striking problem, but it must be evaluated across the entire circumference. Fifth, flip the coin over while keeping the same orientation and compare the reverse design. Sixth, if you suspect a rotated die error, hold the obverse upright, flip the coin vertically from side to side, and observe whether the reverse is dramatically misoriented. A tiny difference is not automatically valuable. Major rotation is the kind of characteristic that deserves documentation. Seventh, inspect the surfaces for signs of a planchet problem, missing metal, unusual shape, incomplete plating, or other manufacturing characteristics. Eighth, weigh the coin using an accurate scale and record the result rather than guessing. Ninth, photograph both sides and the edge before doing anything else. And 10th, compare your findings with established numismatic references or ask a qualified professional. Never clean a suspicious coin, never scrape an odd mark, never polish away the original surface. If you think you've found something important, preserving the evidence is more valuable than making the coin look shiny. Now comes the uncomfortable truth that separates real treasure hunting from internet hype. There is no secret 2010p defect that automatically transforms every Sacagawea dollar into a 5-figure prize. The genuinely valuable pieces are the ones with a specific, identifiable characteristic that can survive professional scrutiny. A spectacular mint error can command serious premiums, while a normal circulated coin may remain essentially a $1 coin. Condition can also create a dramatic difference, especially when an example retains strong original luster and minimal contact marks, but shiny does not mean mint state. This is why the smartest collector doesn't ask, "How much is my coin worth?" first. They ask, "What exactly am I looking at?" That question changes everything. If the answer is ordinary wear, spend it if you want. If the answer is an unusual strike, unusual planchet, dramatic rotation, or another documented mint-made characteristic, stop and investigate. Photograph it, weigh it, protect it, compare it, authenticate it, then and only then start talking about serious value. So the next time a 2010p golden dollar passes through your hands, don't automatically send it back into circulation. Give it 10 seconds under a loop. Turn it beneath the light. Listen to what the surfaces are telling you, because the most dangerous coin to overlook isn't the one that screams rare. It's the one that looks ordinary right until the moment you notice the detail nobody else saw. And if you've got a 2010p sitting somewhere in your home, go find it before someone else spends it. The next clue could be hiding on the other side of that coin, and once you see it, you may never look at pocket change the same way again.